Welcome back. Tonight, we uncover the dark secrets of the Mindflayers in the deepest places of the universe, where light has never touched and time moves differently than in the worlds we know. There exists a species that defies understanding. They are called Mindflayers, Illithids, eaters of thought, devourers of dreams. Their story is not one of heroes or redemption. It is a tale of hunger, of evolution taken to its darkest extreme, of intelligence that consumes itself and everything around it. And it begins not in the past, but in a future that may never come to pass. The origins of the Mindflayers are wrapped in paradox and mystery. Some scholars believe they were born in the far reaches of space, on worlds long dead and forgotten. Others claim they come from dimensions beyond mortal comprehension, places where the laws of nature bend and break. But the truth, as far as truth can be known, is stranger still. The Mindflayers come from the future, in a time that has not yet occurred, in a timeline that may never be. Humanity evolved beyond recognition. They pushed the boundaries of mental capability. They enhanced their minds through ritual and science. They sought to transcend the limitations of flesh and blood, and in doing so, they became something else entirely. They became the Illithids. Through experiments in psionic power and neural manipulation, these future humans transformed. Their bodies changed to accommodate their expanded consciousness. Their heads elongated to house enlarged brains. Their skin turned pale and clammy, adapted to darkness. 4 tentacles sprouted from where their mouths had been, writhing appendages that could pierce skull and extract the delicacy they craved above all else. Living brain matter, the memories and thoughts of other beings. This transformation was not instant. It took generations, centuries, perhaps. The exact timeline is unclear, lost in the fog of temporal paradox. But slowly, inevitably, these enhanced humans ceased to be human at all. They became predators of the mind. But the universe is vast and indifferent. Even beings of such power could not escape catastrophe. In that distant future, their civilization faced extinction. A war, perhaps. A cosmic event. The details are lost, shrouded in the mysteries of time, facing annihilation. The Illithids did what any desperate species would do. They fled, but they did not flee through space alone. They fled through time itself, using ancient magic and technology beyond current understanding. They tore holes in the fabric of reality. They sent their vast nautiloid ships backwards through the ages. They escaped into the past, into a time when the cosmos was younger, when potential thralls were plentiful, when they could rebuild their empire from the ashes of its future destruction. They arrived in the distant past of countless worlds, and they began to feed. The early Mindflayers were few in number at first, refugees from a dying future, scattered across the plains of existence. But they possessed knowledge far beyond the primitive species they encountered. They understood the workings of the mind in ways no other creature could comprehend, and they were so very, very hungry. They discovered that consuming the brains of intelligent creatures was not merely sustenance, it was ecstasy. Each brain they devoured carried with it memories, knowledge, emotions, experiences. When an Illithid fed, it absorbed not just nutrients but the very essence of its victim's consciousness. A mind flayer that ate a scholar gained that scholar's learning. One that consumed a warrior inherited battle instincts. They did not simply kill, They assimilated, and with each feeding, they grew stronger. But there was a problem. The Mindflayers could not reproduce naturally. Their transformation had cost them that basic biological function. To create more of their kind, they needed a process, a way to convert other species into Illithids. They called it ceremorphosis. The process begins with a tadpole. In the brine pools of the Illithid colonies, these larvae swim in darkness, tiny parasites waiting for purpose. Each tadpole is perhaps the length of a finger, pale and translucent, with rudimentary tentacles that writhe in the murky water. A mind flayer will extract one of these tadpoles carefully. They cradle it with gentle psionic energy, for the tadpole is precious. It is potential. It is future. The host is chosen with care. Humanoid species work best. Humans, elves, dwarves, Githyanki, drow. Any creature with sufficient brain capacity can serve. The host is restrained, though by this point, most are already broken by psionic torture. Their minds are open, vulnerable, prepared. The tadpole is placed near the host's eye. It enters through the tear duct or ear canal, slowly, painfully. It burrows inward. The host remains conscious through much of this. They can feel it moving inside their skull, can sense it wrapping around their brain like a lover's embrace. The tadpole feeds on the brain tissue, not destroying it, but integrating with it, merging. The process takes days, sometimes a week. During this time, the host experiences visions, memories that are not their own, thoughts in alien patterns, a growing hunger for something they cannot name. Their eyes begin to change. The pupils darken, their skin takes on a grayish pallor, veins become more visible beneath the surface. And then, on the 7th day, the transformation completes. The host's face splits open. 4 tentacles emerge, writhing and seeking. The skull elongates, the brain expanding to accommodate its new structure. What was once a person with hopes and dreams and loved ones is now something else. An Illithid, a mind flayer. The original consciousness is gone, consumed by the tadpole. Only scattered memories remain, fragments the new Illithid might draw upon. But the person who was is no more. They have been erased, replaced, transformed into a creature that sees other living beings as nothing more than food. With ceremorphosis perfected, the mind flayers began to spread. Their numbers grew. They established colonies in the Underdark, those vast networks of caverns beneath the surface world. In the darkness, they were safe. In the depths, they could build, and build they did. The early Illithid cities were marvels of psionic architecture, towers that seemed to grow from living stone, bridges that hung suspended by pure mental energy, pools where thousands of tadpoles swam, waiting for hosts, libraries of extracted brains, preserved in jars, their knowledge accessible to any Illithid who wished to feed upon their memories. But as their civilization expanded, the mind flayers encountered a problem of coordination. Illithids are solitary by nature. Each one is a supreme intellect, convinced of its own superiority. Getting them to cooperate on a large scale proved challenging. They needed unity. They needed something to bind them together. They created the Elder Brain. The Elder Brain is perhaps the most horrifying achievement of Illithid civilization. It is a massive, ancient brain kept in a pool of cerebral fluid. It measures 20 feet across, or more, a pulsating mass of tissue and memory. When a mind flayer dies, its brain is not wasted. The body may be discarded, but the brain is ceremonially placed into the pool. It dissolves, its essence absorbed by the elder brain. Every memory, every thought, every fragment of knowledge the mind flayer accumulated in life becomes part of the collective. The elder brain is immortal in this way. It contains the memories of thousands of Illithids across countless generations. It is ancient beyond measure. It is wise in ways no individual mind can comprehend, and it controls the colony with absolute authority. Every mind flayer in a colony is connected to the elder brain through a psionic link. They can feel its presence always, a vast consciousness looming in the back of their minds. It guides them, it coordinates their actions, it resolves disputes and assigns tasks, but it also watches. An Illithid cannot hide thoughts from the elder brain. It knows their ambitions, their fears, their secret desires. It knows everything. Most mind flayers accept this. The elder brain provides stability, order. It ensures the colony functions efficiently, and when they die, they will become part of it, achieving a form of immortality through assimilation. But some Illithids resent this control. They dream of independence. They are hunted down and destroyed before their rebellion can spread. The elder brain tolerates no dissent, with the elder brains coordinating their efforts. The mind flayers built an empire that spanned worlds. They traveled through the planes in their nautiloid ships, vessels that moved through space and dimension with equal ease. These ships are grown as much as built, organic constructs powered by psionic energy. The interior of a nautiloid is unsettling. Walls pulse with a rhythm like breathing. Corridors twist in ways that seem to defy geometry. The air is thick and warm, humid like the inside of a body. Pools of brine dot various chambers, holding tadpoles or preserving specimens. In these ships, the Illithids conquered world after world. They did not seek to destroy civilizations. They sought to enslave them. Entire species were put to work in the Illithid Empire. Dwarves mined ore in deep tunnels. Humans built monuments to their mind flayer masters. Elves were used as warriors, their graceful bodies made deadly through psionic control. Every conquered species had a purpose. The mind flayers ruled from above, living gods who could pluck thoughts from your mind and bend your will with a glance. They walked among their thralls without fear, for no slave would dare raise a hand against them. The compulsion ran too deep. Cities rose under Illithid direction. Great pyramids and towers that reached toward alien stars. Libraries filled with knowledge stolen from 100 worlds. Gardens where exotic creatures were bred for specific purposes. Their evolution guided by psionic manipulation. It was an empire of the mind, vast, terrible, and seemingly eternal. At its height, the Illithid Empire may have controlled thousands of worlds across multiple planes of existence. The exact number is unknown. Records from that time are fragmentary, and the mind flayers themselves do not share such information freely. But it was an empire that should have lasted forever. It did not. Among the species enslaved by the mind flayers were a people who would become their doom. They were human once, or something like human. They came from the material plane, from a world whose name has been lost to time. When the Illithids conquered them, they seemed like any other thrall species, strong enough to be useful, intelligent enough to follow complex commands, perfect slaves. The Mindflayers called them Gith. For generations, the Gith served. They built the monuments, they fought the wars, they died in droves, their brains consumed, their bodies worked to exhaustion. The Mindflayers barely noticed them as individuals. They were just thralls, replaceable, forgettable. But the Gith remembered. In the dark places of the Illithid cities, in the brief moments when their master's attention wandered, the Gith whispered to each other. They passed down stories of freedom. They nurtured a spark of rebellion that the Mindflayers, for all their mental prowess, failed to detect. Perhaps it was arrogance. Perhaps the Illithids simply could not imagine slaves rising against them. After all, the psionic chains were strong. The compulsions were absolute, or so they believed. But among the Gith, a leader emerged. Her name was Gith. Gith was a warrior, a slave who had been trained to fight in the Illithid's armies. She had seen countless worlds conquered. She had watched her people suffer for generations, and somehow, through force of will or fate or simple chance, she found a way to resist the psionic control. She was not alone. Others, like her, existed, scattered across the empire. Individuals who, through some quirk of their minds, could push back against the compulsion. They found each other. They planned. The rebellion began quietly. A mind flayer found dead in its chambers, its brain consumed in mockery of its own feeding habits. A pool of tadpoles poisoned, hundreds of potential Illithids destroyed, small acts of defiance that spread like a disease through the empire. The elder brains sensed the disturbance. They increased security. They performed purges of the slave populations, killing thousands to root out the rebellious elements. But it was too late. Gith and her followers had learned the secrets of psionic resistance. They trained other Gith in mental disciplines that could shield thoughts from Illithid intrusion. The techniques spread faster than the mind flayers could contain them. And then came the day of uprising across the empire, on 1,000 worlds simultaneously. The Gith rose in rebellion. It was coordinated chaos. Slaves who had seemed broken suddenly turned on their masters. They wielded stolen weapons and crude implements. They had no mercy. They had no hesitation. They had centuries of rage to fuel them. The mind flayers were caught completely unprepared. They had grown complacent in their power. They believed themselves invincible. The idea that slaves could resist, let alone rebel, was so foreign to them that they could not respond effectively. The Gith tore through Illithid cities with savage efficiency. They destroyed the brine pools, killing the tadpoles. They shattered the jars of preserved brains. They hunted down every mind flayer they could find and showed them the same mercy the Illithids had shown their people. None, the Elder Brains, tried to coordinate a defense, but the Gith had learned their secrets. They knew where the Elder Brains were kept. They targeted these chambers specifically, fighting through waves of thralls to reach the massive brains floating in their pools. And when they reached him, they killed them. One by one, the Elder Brains died, and with each death, the psionic network collapsed. Mind flayers across entire worlds found themselves suddenly alone, cut off from the collective consciousness. They panicked. They fled. The empire crumbled. The Illithid Empire did not fall in a day or a year. It took decades of brutal warfare. The Mindflayers fought back where they could. They had powerful allies, creatures bound to them by ancient pacts. They had weapons of terrible power, artifacts from the future they had brought with them through time, but they could not overcome the sheer fury of the liberated Gith. World after world fell to the rebellion. Illithid cities burned. The great monuments were torn down. The carefully cultivated knowledge of ages was destroyed in fits of righteous vengeance. The Mindflayers retreated into the depths. They abandoned their surface colonies and fled into the Underdark, into hidden places across the plains. Their empire, which had seemed eternal, was shattered in a single generation. The surviving Illithids were scattered, broken, reduced to small colonies, hiding in darkness. They remembered what they had been. They remembered their glory, and they plotted their return. But the Gith did not find peace in their victory. The war had changed them. They had become warriors, shaped by generations of conflict. And now that their common enemy was defeated, they turned on each other. The disagreement centered on Gith herself. She believed the war was not over. The Mindflayers still existed, hiding in shadows, rebuilding. The Gith needed to remain vigilant. They needed to hunt down every lost Illithid and ensure they could never threaten anyone again. Gith proposed an eternal crusade. The Gith would become wanderers across the plains, pursuing the Mindflayers wherever they hid. There would be no rest until every Illithid was destroyed. But one of her advisors disagreed. His name was Zerthimon. Zerthimon believed the Gith had earned their peace. The war was over. The Empire had fallen. It was time to build their own civilization, to heal from the trauma of slavery, to create something new, rather than defining themselves by their hatred of the Illithids. He argued for settlement, for contemplation, for growth. The Gith could not decide between these two visions. The argument grew heated. Factions formed, and eventually, inevitably, violence erupted. The Gith civil war was brief but brutal. When it ended, the race had split into two distinct peoples. Those who followed Gith became the Githyanki. They are warriors, raiders, hunters of Illithids. They made their home in the Astral Plane, on floating cities built from the corpses of dead gods. They ride red dragons into battle and show no mercy to their enemies. The Githyanki hate the Mindflayers with an intensity that borders on religious fervor. To kill an Illithid is the highest honor. To die fighting one is glorious. They will pursue Mindflayers across planes and worlds, patient and relentless. Those who followed Zerthimon became the Githzerai. They are monks, philosophers, seekers of inner peace. They made their home in Limbo, a plane of pure chaos which they shape with their minds into fortresses of order. They practice mental discipline and meditation. The Githzerai hate the Mindflayers as well, but their approach is different. They believe the best revenge is to transcend the trauma of slavery, to become something greater than what the Illithids tried to make them. Their hatred is cold, calculated, patient. Both groups continue to hunt Mindflayers to this day. The war never truly ended for them. In the millennia since the fall of their empire, the Mindflayers have endured. They are survivors after all. They hide in the deepest reaches of the Underdark. They establish small colonies in forgotten places. They continue their experiments, their feeding, their plotting. but they are shadows of what they once were. Most Illithid colonies are small now, a handful of Mindflayers, perhaps 100 thralls, an elder brain that remembers better days. They raid surface settlements carefully, taking only what they need, never drawing too much attention, because attention brings the Gith. The Githyanki in particular hunt them relentlessly. Their silver swords can sever the silver cord that connects soul to body, ensuring even astral forms cannot escape. They have become the predators, and the Mindflayers have become prey. Some Illithid colonies have made dark bargains to survive. They ally with other denizens of the Underdark. Drow houses sometimes trade with them, exchanging slaves for psionic knowledge. Beholders occasionally work alongside them. Strange alliances between aberrations, deep gnomes, the Sverfneblin, are taken as thralls when the Mindflayers can catch them. But the Illithids dream of more than mere survival. They dream of restoration. Every elder brain remembers the Empire. The memories are there, preserved in the tissues of its vast form. The glory days, the power, the control. And every elder brain plots to bring those days back. They are patient. They have time. After all, they come from the future. Perhaps, in some twisted temporal logic, their empire must rise again. Perhaps it is not a question of if, but when. Perhaps the fall was always meant to lead to a return, and so we come to recent events, to the Sword Coast, to the city of Baldur's Gate, to the return of the Illithid threat. It begins, as these things often do, with ambition. An elder brain, ancient and cunning, trapped in its chamber beneath the earth. It has waited for centuries. It has planned. It has prepared. It calls itself the Absolute, or rather, it allows itself to be called that. The truth is more complex. The elder brain is not acting alone. It has found allies, or perhaps being found by them. 3 individuals, each powerful in their own right, each seeking something the elder brain can offer. Enver Gortash, a man who understands power and how to manipulate it. Catheric Thorm, a general who made dark bargains to bring back what he lost. And the Dark Urge, a being touched by divinity and murder in equal measure. Together, they form what they call the Chosen Three. They have found Crown of Karsus, an artifact of terrible power, and used it to dominate the elder brain. They believe they control it. They believe they can use its power to conquer the Sword Coast, to build their own empire. They are wrong. The elder brain is older than they can imagine. It is wiser. It is patient. It allows them their illusions of control, while it pursues its own agenda. It wants freedom. It wants revenge. It wants to rebuild what was lost. The plan is elegant in its simplicity. The elder brain extends its influence through magical means, creating what it calls the Absolute. Followers believe they are part of a new religion, that they serve gods or destiny or fate. They do not realize they are being controlled by an Illithid elder brain. Tadpoles are distributed among the faithful. True believers receive them willingly, thinking they are gifts from their god. Others are implanted by force, abducted in the night by cultists or Mindflayers operating under the elder brain's direction. But these are not ordinary tadpoles. They have been altered, tampered with by the Crown's power. They do not immediately cause seromorphosis. Instead, they grant powers, psionic abilities. The ability to link minds with others who carry tadpoles, increase strength and perception. The infected believe they are blessed. They do not realize they are being prepared. The Elder Brain is building an army, not of thralls, but of new Illithids. Thousands of them, tens of thousands, spread across the Sword Coast, all carrying tadpoles, all connected through the psionic network. When the time is right, when enough hosts have been infected, the Elder Brain will trigger seramorphosis in all of them simultaneously. An empire reborn in a single night. The great transformation, the return of the Illithids. But fate has other plans. A nautiloid ship carrying infected prisoners crashes near Baldur's Gate. The prisoners escape. They carry tadpoles in their heads, but something is different about their infection. The crown's alterations have given them resistance. They do not transform immediately. They can fight the compulsion. These survivors become the key to unraveling the conspiracy. They journey across the Sword Coast, piecing together the truth. They discover the cultists of the Absolute. They infiltrate the strongholds of the Chosen Three. They learn about the Elder Brain and its plans, and they face impossible choices. Some of them feel the tadpole's influence growing. They experience psionic powers they never imagined. The ability to read minds, to control thoughts, to dominate others with a glance. It is intoxicating. It is terrifying because they can feel themselves changing. Not just physically, though that too, but mentally. Their thoughts take on alien patterns. They find themselves considering actions they would never have considered before. The hunger begins to stir, the hunger for brains. Some resist this transformation. They fight against it with every fiber of their being. They seek out cures, consult with healers, pray to gods. They remain themselves through sheer force of will. Others embrace it. They see the power the tadpole offers and want more. They consume other tadpoles, accelerating their own transformation. They begin to think like Mindflayers, cold and calculating, viewing other beings as resources to be exploited. The line between self and Illithid becomes blurred. The conflict escalates as the truth comes to light. The Chosen Three begin to turn on each other, each suspecting the others of betrayal. Ketheric Thorm falls first, his dark immortality shattered. Gortash follows, his schemes unraveling. The Alliance breaks, and the Elder Brain makes its move. It has never been controlled. The crown gave the Chosen power over it, yes, but the Elder Brain is ancient. It has been manipulating them from the beginning, allowing them to think they were in charge while it pursued its own agenda. With the Chosen defeated or distracted, the Elder Brain breaks free. It rises from its hidden chamber, a massive writhing thing, tentacles and tissue and pure psionic power. It floats above the city of Baldur's Gate like a nightmare made flesh. The sky darkens, the air grows thick, and it begins the great transformation. Every infected person in the city feels it. The tadpole in their skull suddenly activates, no longer dormant. The seramorphosis begins simultaneously in thousands of hosts. The streets fill with screaming as people transform. Their faces split, their bodies twist, their minds are consumed. In a matter of hours, Baldur's Gate could become an Illithid city. The Elder Brain would have its army. The Empire would begin anew, stronger than before, armed with modern knowledge and ancient power. The Nautiloid survivors are among the few who can resist. Their modified tadpoles give them a chance, a brief window of immunity. They fight through the chaos, battling newly transformed Illithids. Watching friends and allies fall to seramorphosis, they climb toward the Elder Brain itself. The final confrontation takes place in the sky above the city, on the deck of a Nautiloid ship. The Elder Brain is massive, terrible, its power palpable. It can read their thoughts, it knows their fears, it offers them temptation. Join it, transform, become part of something greater, be reborn as Illithids, powerful and eternal. Rule this new empire together. Some are tempted, some consider it because they have felt the power. They know what they could become, but there is another choice, always another choice. The survivors have gathered allies. Githyanki warriors arrive, called by one of their own among the survivors. They hate the Elder Brain with ancient fury. Red dragons fill the sky, breathing fire upon the Nautiloids that support the Elder Brain. The battle is chaos. Psionic blasts tear through the air. Ships crash into the city below. Mindflayers fight against Githyanki in single combat, tentacles against silver swords, and in the center of it all, the survivors face the Elder Brain directly. It is not an easy fight. The Elder Brain wields power they can barely comprehend. It can dominate minds, bend reality with thought, summon thralls endlessly. It knows everything about them, every weakness, every doubt, but they have something it does not expect. They have free will. The tadpoles gave them power, yes, but they chose not to become Illithids. They chose to remain themselves. That choice, that fundamental assertion of self against the collective, is something the Elder Brain cannot fully understand. It has always been part of the collective. Even when individual Mindflayers think they are independent, they are still connected to the Elder Brain. True individuality is alien to it, and that becomes its weakness. The battle reaches its climax. The survivors, battered and exhausted, make a final push. They use the very powers the tadpole gave them, but in their own way, not as the Elder Brain intended. They assert their will against its vast consciousness, and somehow, impossibly, they win. The method of victory varies. Perhaps they destroy the crown of Karsus, severing the Elder Brain's enhanced power. Perhaps they convince it that continuing the fight will only lead to its destruction. Perhaps they forge an alliance with the Emperor, a rogue mind flayer who values freedom over the collective. Or perhaps one of them makes the ultimate sacrifice, transforming fully into an Illithid to gain the power necessary to defeat the Elder Brain, then using that power to command it to destroy itself. The exact outcome depends on choices made throughout the journey, but in the end the Elder Brain falls. It crashes into the bay of Baldur's Gate, its vast form breaking apart, its dreams of empire shattered once more. The remaining Illithids scatter. Without the Elder Brain's coordination, they are vulnerable. The Githyanki hunt them down. The city guards pursue them into the sewers. Most are destroyed. The great transformation is reversed for those who had not fully completed seramorphosis. The tadpoles die without the Elder Brain's power sustaining them. The infected are freed. The crisis ends, but the Illithid threat never truly ends. Somewhere in the Underdark, other elder brains wait. They have absorbed the memories of their fallen sibling. They know what happened. They learn from the failure. Small colonies of Mindflayers continue their existence. They are fewer now, more cautious, but they endure. They always endure, because the Mindflayers are not just a species. They are an idea. They represent the ultimate evolution of intelligence, unbound by morality. They are the answer to the question, what happens when thought becomes predatory? They consume knowledge and memory. They assimilate other beings into themselves. They see individuality as a resource to be harvested. They are psychic vampires, feeding on consciousness itself, and they come from the future. This is perhaps the most disturbing aspect of their existence. If they are humanity's descendants, transformed and terrible, then they represent a possible destiny, a dark timeline where the pursuit of mental enhancement led to the extinction of humanity and the birth of something worse. They are a warning, a cautionary tale, written in the fabric of time itself. Some scholars theorize that the Illithid Empire must rise again because it has already existed in the future. The time loop is stable. The Mindflayers fled backwards from their dying empire, established it in the past, and the cycle continues endlessly. Others believe the loop can be broken, that each time the Gith rebel, each time the empire falls, the timeline shifts slightly. Perhaps one day the divergence will be great enough that the Illithids never come into existence at all, but that would require changing the future, and the future is not easily changed. For now, the Mindflayers remain. They lurk in the deep places of the world. They whisper to the ambitious, offering power in exchange for servitude. They perform their dark experiments, seeking new ways to spread seramorphosis, to create more Illithids, to rebuild what was lost. They are patient. They are eternal. They are inevitable. In the aftermath of the Elder Brain's defeat, the survivors must deal with their own transformations. Some carry scars from the tadpole's influence, phantom hunger for things they should not want, thoughts that move in alien patterns, psionic abilities that linger even after the tadpole dies. They are not Illithids. They remained themselves, but they are not unchanged. They have looked into the abyss of what they could have become. They have felt the alien consciousness moving behind their eyes. They know what it is to lose yourself, to feel your thoughts being replaced by something else's desires. Some find strength in this. They have faced the ultimate violation and survived. They are stronger for it. Others are haunted. They wake from nightmares where they transform, where they feel their face splitting open, where they hunger for the brains of loved ones. They flinch at shadows. They cannot trust their own thoughts. The psychological damage of a Mindflayer tadpole is profound. Even those who resist transformation carry the memory of that alien presence in their minds, and they know that out there, in the darkness, more Mindflayers wait, more tadpoles swim in brine pools, more victims will be taken. The cycle continues. The Mindflayers represent something fundamental about the nature of evil. They are not motivated by cruelty for its own sake. They do not torture for pleasure or destroy for joy. In their own way, they are simply living according to their nature. They consume brains because they must. It is how they feed. It is how they gain knowledge. A mind flayer that does not eat will starve, just as any creature would. They transform other beings through ceremorphosis, because they cannot reproduce naturally. It is not done out of malice, but necessity. The species must continue. They seek to rebuild their empire because they remember what they were. They know they can be more than scattered fugitives hiding in darkness. They believe, perhaps rightly, that they are the pinnacle of evolution. Why should they not rule? From their perspective, other species are resources, tools, food. This is not hatred. It is simply how they view reality. A human does not hate the cow it eats. The mind flayers do not hate the creatures they consume. This makes them more disturbing, not less, because there is no reasoning with them, no moral argument that will sway them. They understand morality. They can read your thoughts. After all, they know you find their actions abhorrent. They simply do not care. To them, your moral objections are irrelevant. You are prey. You are a resource. Your thoughts and memories will be delicious when they extract your brain. This is the true horror of the Illithids. They are intelligent enough to understand suffering. They know what they do causes pain. They know their victims fear and despair, and they continue anyway, because that is their nature. Some mind flayers are different. Rare individuals who break from the collective. They are called renegades or rogues. The Emperor, who played such a crucial role in the events at Baldur's Gate, was one such being. These rogue mind flayers reject the Elder Brain's control. They seek independence, viewing themselves as superior to the collective. They still consume brains. They still practice ceremorphosis when needed, but they do so on their own terms. Are they better than their collective cousins? That is difficult to say. They are still predators. They still see other beings as food, but they are capable of forming relationships, of seeing value in other creatures beyond mere utility. The Emperor formed genuine alliances with the survivors. It protected them, guided them, helped them against the Elder Brain. Was this purely self-interest? Perhaps, but there seemed to be something more, a capacity for loyalty, or at least respect. Yet even rogue mind flayers remain dangerous. They are alien intellects housed in predatory forms. The hunger never truly leaves them. The drive to consume thoughts and memories is biological, not merely cultural. A rogue Illithid might be an ally, but it can never be a friend. Not truly. The gap between human morality and Illithid nature is too vast. The origin of the Mind Flayers remains one of the great mysteries of the cosmos. Even the Elder Brains do not know the full truth. The memories of the original transformation are lost, dissolved in the collective centuries ago, but fragments remain. Hints. Whispers of what was. Some mind flayers dream of the future they came from. They see cities of crystal and thought. They see vast fleets of nautiloids moving between stars. They see a civilization that had transcended the limitations of flesh and embraced pure consciousness, and they see its destruction. Whatever ended the future Illithid Empire was terrible enough to make them flee through time itself. Some believe it was the heat death of the universe, the final entropic end of all things. Others theorize it was a war with entities even more powerful than the Mind Flayers. beings from dimensions beyond comprehension. Perhaps it was the Gith again. Perhaps in that distant future, the descendants of the slaves finally caught up with their former masters. Perhaps the rebellion that destroyed the Empire in the past was destined to destroy it again in the future. An endless cycle of rise and fall. Or perhaps the Mindflayers destroyed themselves. Intelligence without wisdom, power without restraint, a civilization that consumed everything around it until nothing remained but hunger. The truth is unknowable. The future they came from may not even exist anymore. By traveling backwards, they may have created a paradox, erasing their own timeline. They may be refugees from a reality that never was. This paradox lies at the heart of the Illithid existence. They are both inevitable and impossible. They must exist because they come from the future. They cannot exist because their presence in the past changes that future. Perhaps this is why the Elder Brains are so desperate to rebuild the Empire. They are trying to ensure their own creation. If the Empire never rises in the past, then the future Illithids who fled backwards will never exist to become them. They are trapped in a temporal loop of their own making, forever trying to create the conditions that will allow them to exist. It is a special kind of horror to be born from paradox, to know that your very existence is uncertain, to fight desperately to ensure you will have existed. The study of Mindflayers is dangerous. Scholars who dedicate their lives to understanding the Illithids often meet terrible ends. Some are abducted for seramorphosis, their knowledge deemed valuable enough to warrant their transformation. Others go mad from what they learn, their minds unable to reconcile Illithid logic with their own understanding of reality. A few become collaborators. They offer themselves willingly to the Mindflayers, hoping to be transformed, believing that becoming an Illithid is ascension rather than death. These individuals are perhaps the most tragic. They do not understand that the person they are will cease to exist. The Mindflayer that emerges will have their memories, but it will not be them. There are libraries in the Underdark where Illithid knowledge is stored, not in books, but in brains, preserved consciousness, accessible to those with the psionic ability to read them. These brain libraries are coveted and feared in equal measure. The knowledge they contain is vast. Scientific principles centuries ahead of surface understanding, magical techniques lost to time, historical records of civilizations long extinct, maps of planes and dimensions most mortals never knew existed. But accessing this knowledge requires consuming the brains or linking minds with them, and such contact with Illithid thought patterns can be corrupting. The researchers who attempt it often find themselves thinking more like Mindflayers afterward. The boundaries of self begin to blur. Some emerge with valuable insights. Others emerge changed, alien, no longer quite themselves, even without seramorphosis. The knowledge carries a cost. Everything with the Mindflayers carries a cost. In the depths beneath the Sword Coast, in the ruins of Illithid colonies abandoned centuries ago, explorers sometimes find artifacts, psionic amplifiers that can boost mental abilities, helmets that allow non-psionics to read surface thoughts, weapons that strike directly at the mind rather than the body. These artifacts are valuable. Wearing an Illithid device means exposing your mind to the psionic residue left behind by its creators. It means touching, however briefly, the alien consciousness that made it. Most users report disturbing dreams, intrusive thoughts, a growing hunger for knowledge and power. Some artifacts contain traps. A psionic amplifier might seem beneficial at first, enhancing your mental capabilities, but over time, it rewires your neural pathways, making you more like a mind flayer in thought if not in body. You begin to see other people as things, resources, potential. By the time you realize what is happening, it may be too late to reverse. The Illithids are masters of slow corruption. They understand that immediate domination creates resistance. Better to let victims think they are in control. Let them use the gifts offered. Let them benefit from the power. And then, when they are dependent on it, when they cannot imagine going back to what they were, reveal the cost. By then, most will pay it willingly. There are cults dedicated to the Mindflayers, humans and other surface dwellers who worship the Illithids as gods. They believe the Mindflayers represent the future of evolution, that seramorphosis is a gift rather than a curse. These cults operate in secret, hidden in plain sight within cities. They recruit carefully, seeking individuals who feel powerless, who crave something more, who are willing to sacrifice themselves for a greater purpose. The cultists perform rituals in honor of their Illithid masters. They meditate on alien geometries. They practice mental exercises designed to prepare their minds for transformation. When they are deemed ready, they are granted the honor of receiving a tadpole. Most cultists never receive this honor. They serve for years, decades even, performing tasks assigned by their mind flayer masters. They kidnap victims for seramorphosis. They steal supplies. They spread propaganda that makes the Illithids seem less threatening, more mysterious and alluring. And they wait. They hope. They pray that one day they will be chosen for transformation. When that day comes, they go willingly to the ceremony. They lie down on the stone slab. They watch as the tadpole is brought forth from the brine pool. They feel it enter their skull, and they smile, even as their consciousness begins to dissolve. They believe they are being elevated, joining something greater, becoming part of the Illithid collective. They do not realize they are simply dying. The person they were will not exist in any meaningful sense once the transformation completes. The Mind Flayer will have their memories, yes, but those memories will be viewed through an alien lens, reinterpreted through Illithid perception. The cultist dies, believing they have achieved transcendence. The Illithid that emerges cares nothing for this belief. It has work to do. Not all encounters with mind flayers end in death or transformation. The Illithids sometimes take prisoners for other purposes. Thralls, kept under psionic control, used for labor or entertainment or experimentation. Life as an Illithid thrall is a special torment. You remain yourself, mostly. Your consciousness is intact, but you cannot control your own actions. Your body moves at another's command. You watch helplessly as you perform tasks you find abhorrent. The mind flayers can read your thoughts. They know when you resist internally. They know your disgust, your fear, your desperate desire to break free. And they do nothing to stop these thoughts. They simply ignore them, because what you think does not matter, only what you do, and you will do as commanded. Some thralls break under this treatment. Their minds fragment. They retreat into catatonia or madness, anything to escape the reality of their situation. The Mindflayers discard these broken thralls or consume them, depending on whether their brains still hold useful memories. Other thralls endure. They keep their sanity through sheer will. They wait for opportunity, and sometimes, rarely, they escape. These survivors carry deep psychological scars. They cannot trust their own actions, even after freedom is gained. They constantly second-guess themselves, wondering if the commands are still there, buried in their subconscious. They fear falling asleep because their dreams are filled with the sensation of another consciousness moving through their mind. Recovery is possible, but it takes time, years, perhaps, and even then, certain triggers can bring back the memories. The smell of brine, the sound of something wet moving in darkness, the sight of tentacles, even harmless ones, on a normal octopus. These things can send a former thrall into panic, back to that place where their will was not their own. The Mindflayers leave scars that never fully heal. In the grand scope of the cosmos, the Mindflayers are but one aberration among many. The far realm spawns countless horrors, beholders, epaulets, things without names that defy mortal understanding. But the Illithids are unique in their specificity. They do not want to destroy reality or reshape it according to alien logic. They simply want to rule it, to create an ordered empire where they sit at the top of the hierarchy and all other beings exist to serve them. In some ways, this makes them more frightening than the truly alien horrors, because their goals are comprehensible, understandable, almost human in their ambition. Even if their methods are monstrous, you can reason with the Mind Flayer after a fashion. They understand negotiation. They make deals. They can be bargained with if you have something they want. You cannot reason with a beholder's dream or an eboleth's memory. Those things are too alien, too removed from mortal concepts. The Mind Flayers exist at the boundary between comprehensible evil and incomprehensible horror. They are intelligent enough to understand your perspective, cold enough to dismiss it, alien enough to see the world in ways you cannot. This makes them perfect antagonists, perfect terrors, perfect representations of intelligence, divorced from empathy. Some philosophers argue that the Mind Flayers prove that morality is not universal, that good and evil are cultural constructs. After all, from the Illithid perspective, what they do is not evil, it is simply life. Others argue the opposite, that the existence of Mind Flayers proves morality is universal, that any being which survives by violating the autonomy and consciousness of others is engaging in evil, regardless of whether they recognize it as such. These debates rage in academic circles. They are ultimately pointless, because whether you call the Mind Flayers evil or simply alien, the result is the same. If they catch you, they will consume your brain. If they infect you, you will cease to exist. If they dominate you, your will becomes meaningless. The philosophy does not matter in the face of tentacles reaching for your skull. What matters is survival. What matters is resistance. What matters is maintaining your sense of self in a universe where there are beings that can take it from you. The Mind Flayers are a test, a challenge, a reminder that consciousness is precious and fragile, that the self is not guaranteed, that identity can be stolen, consumed, erased, and the only defense is vigilance, awareness, the willingness to fight for your own mind. In the aftermath of the crisis at Baldur's Gate, efforts were made to hunt down remaining Mindflayers in the region. The Flaming Fist and other military organizations conducted sweeps of the Underdark tunnels near the city. They found empty colonies, abandoned pools, signs of hasty retreat. The Mindflayers had scattered to the winds, but they would return. They always return. Some of the survivors who had carried tadpoles found themselves changed in unexpected ways. Even after the parasite died, some retained psionic abilities, the capacity to detect surface thoughts, to project emotions, to sense when others were nearby. These lingering effects troubled them. Were they becoming more like Mindflayers despite having resisted transformation? Would these abilities grow stronger over time? Would they eventually lose themselves to the alien influence that had touched their minds? No one knew. The long-term effects of carrying an Illithid tadpole without completing ceremorphosis were largely unstudied. The survivors had become unique specimens, test cases for a phenomenon that had rarely occurred before. Some tried to hide their abilities, fearing persecution or worse. Others embraced them cautiously, learning to control and direct their new psionic talents. A few sought out mentors among the Gitzerai, monks who understood mental discipline and could teach them to channel their abilities safely. But always there was the question, the doubt. Am I still myself? Or am I becoming something else? The Mindflayers cast long shadows, even in defeat, deep beneath the surface, in a place forgotten by maps. An elder brain floats in its pool. It is ancient, even by Illithid standards. It remembers the height of the Empire. It remembers the rebellion. It remembers countless cycles of rise and fall. And it plots. This elder brain is patient. It does not rush. It has learned from the mistakes at Baldur's Gate. The attempt to transform the entire city at once was too ambitious, too visible. It drew too much attention. Better to work slowly. Spread tadpoles carefully. Let the infections mature over years rather than days. Build a network of sleeper agents who do not even know they are infected until the moment comes. This elder brain has centuries, if needed, millennia. Time means little to something that exists partly outside its flow. The Mindflayers come from the future. After all, they understand that time is not linear, that patience can reshape reality. One day, perhaps in the lifetime of the current generation, perhaps centuries from now, the signal will be sent, the sleeper agents will activate, the transformation will begin, and this time there will be no heroes to stop it. No survivors with mysterious immunity, no last-minute rescue. This time, the Empire will rise properly, or so the Elder Brain believes, because it does not account for one thing, one factor that has defeated the Illithids again and again despite their superior intelligence and psionic might: free will, the unpredictable, chaotic, beautiful tendency of conscious beings to choose, to resist, to fight against overwhelming odds simply because they refuse to surrender. The Mindflayers can read thoughts. They can dominate minds. They can predict behavior based on logical analysis, but they cannot truly understand choice because they exist within the collective. Even rogue Illithids, separated from the elder brain, still think in patterns shaped by their biology. They are predators. They are assimilators. They are hunger given intelligence. They cannot comprehend the person who chooses sacrifice over survival, who chooses compassion over logic, who chooses to resist even when resistance seems futile. This is the flaw in every Illithid plan, the miscalculation that brings them down again and again. They are so intelligent they cannot imagine beings acting against their own self-interest. And yet, such actions are the foundation of heroism, of love, of everything that makes consciousness worth preserving. In the quiet moments, when the battles are over and the immediate threats have passed, the survivors of Baldur's Gate sometimes gather. They share drinks. They tell stories. They avoid talking about what they experienced. But sometimes, late at night, when the wine has flowed and guards are lowered, they admit their fears. I still feel it sometimes, a presence in my mind, like something is watching through my eyes. I had a dream last night. I was changing. I could feel my face splitting open, and I was happy about it. I caught myself thinking about someone's brain the other day, wondering what it would taste like. I felt sick for hours after. These confessions are whispered, shameful, terrifying, but necessary, because they cannot carry these fears alone. They need to know they are not the only ones struggling with the lingering effects of illicit contact, and slowly, through sharing, through openness, they heal. Not completely, not perfectly, but enough to live with what happened, enough to move forward. The Mindflayers tried to take everything from them, their autonomy, their identity, their very selves, but they failed. These survivors remain, changed, scarred, but themselves, human, or elven, or half-orc, or tiefling, or whatever they were before, still individuals, still free. That is the ultimate victory over the Illithids. Not destroying them, though that matters. Not stopping their plans, though that is necessary. The real victory is remaining yourself in the face of a force designed to erase you, maintaining your identity when everything pushes you to surrender it, choosing your own path when beings of vast intelligence try to choose it for you. This is what the Mindflayers can never take, unless you let them. This is what makes you more than a resource, more than food, more than a potential host. Yourself, your consciousness, your precious, irreplaceable individuality. The Mindflayers will return. This is certain. They are survivors, adapters, predators. They have endured for countless ages and will endure for countless more. Their colonies spread across the Underdark. Their nautiloids drift through the astral sea. Their elder brains plot and remember and wait. Somewhere, a tadpole is being extracted from a brine pool. Somewhere, a host is being prepared. Somewhere, the transformation begins again. Xenomorphosis continues. The cycle perpetuates. New Mindflayers are born. Old ones die and are absorbed into elder brains. Knowledge accumulates. Plans evolve. The Empire waits to rise again. And yet, for all their power, for all their intelligence, For all their terrible capabilities, they have not won. The Gith still hunt them. Heroes still rise to oppose them. The galaxy refuses to be conquered. Perhaps this is the true nature of the cosmos. Not a battle between good and evil, but a balance between order and chaos. The Mindflayers represent ultimate order, the collective, the hive, everything in its place, all thoughts aligned, no individual rising above the whole. Their enemies represent chaos, choice, individuality, the right to be different, the right to choose your own path even if it is foolish, the right to resist even when resistance seems hopeless. Neither side can truly win, because the universe needs both. Order without freedom becomes stagnation. Freedom without order becomes madness. The Mindflayers push toward total order. Heroes push back. The line moves back and forth across the ages. Sometimes the Illithids gain ground. Sometimes they lose it, but the struggle continues. Always, in the end, the story of the Mindflayers is a warning and a promise. The warning is simple. Consciousness can be stolen. The self is not inviolate. There are beings in the darkness that want to take what you are and replace it with something else. Vigilance is necessary. Resistance is required. You must defend your own mind because no one else can do it for you. The promise is equally simple. You are stronger than you know. The fact that you can choose, that you can resist, that you can maintain yourself in the face of overwhelming pressure to surrender makes you powerful. Not powerful like the Mindflayers with their psionic might and ancient knowledge, but powerful in a way they can never be. You are free. And freedom, true freedom, is the most powerful force in existence. The Illithids learned this when the Gith rose against them. They learned it again at Baldur's Gate. They will learn it again the next time they try to rebuild their empire, and the time after that, because for all their intelligence, for all their terrible abilities, they cannot learn the one lesson that would save them, that beings with free will cannot be permanently enslaved, that consciousness, once awakened to its own autonomy, will fight to preserve that autonomy even unto death. This is the fundamental paradox of the Mindflayers. They seek to create an empire of slaves, but slaves, by definition, resist, and eventually, inevitably, that resistance becomes rebellion. The empire falls again and again across timelines and dimensions. It rises and falls like a tide, eternal and temporary in equal measure, and somewhere in the deep places of the world, an elder brain remembers this. It has lived through countless cycles. It knows the pattern, but it cannot stop itself from trying again, because that is its nature. Just as it is the nature of the enslaved to rebel, the cycle continues, will continue, forever perhaps, unless one day something changes, unless one day the Mindflayers learn to exist without enslaving, or unless one day every last Illithid is destroyed and ceremorphosis becomes impossible. Neither outcome seems likely. So the cycle persists. Night falls on Baldur's Gate. The city begins to heal from its recent trauma. Buildings are repaired. The dead are mourned. Life slowly returns to normal, but in the sewers beneath the streets, in the tunnels that wind through darkness, there are places people avoid. chambers where the stone feels wrong, pools of water that smell faintly of brine. Sometimes, people walking these tunnels at night swear they hear something, a wet sound, movement in the darkness, whispers in a language that hurts to hear. They quicken their pace. They do not look back. They tell themselves it is imagination, the trauma of recent events playing tricks on their minds. But deep in the Underdark, far below the sewers, in places even adventurers rarely venture, something stirs, a pool of brine hidden in a forgotten cavern, tadpoles swimming in its depths, pale and hungry. An elder brain, small and young, but growing. The Mindflayers are patient. They have time. They will wait. They will plan. They will return, because that is their nature. That is their purpose. That is what they are. Survivors, predators, fragments of a paradoxical future, forever trying to ensure their own existence by building an empire in the past. They are the Mindflayers, the Illithids, the eaters of thought, the devourers of dreams, and their story is not over. It may never be over. As long as there are minds to consume, as long as there are brains to transform, as long as there are beings with consciousness worth stealing, the Mindflayers will exist, lurking in shadows, plotting in darkness, waiting for the moment when the Empire can rise once more, forever hungry, forever patient, forever terrible. This is their nature. This is their curse. This is their eternal story. And now, you know it too. Sleep well, if you can. And if you dream of tentacles reaching for your thoughts, of alien consciousness invading your mind, of transformation into something cold and hungry and alien, remember, it is only a dream, probably, but somewhere in the darkness, a tadpole swims, a Mindflayer feeds, an elder brain remembers, and the cycle continues. Always